So, our today's guest is Xeniya from Ukraine, who is an intern in Estonian Green Movement since January this year. And she is an ordinary person who has been experienced, or who has had more experience the nuclear energy impact that maybe she would have liked to. And this event, we are talking in English because she is talking a lot of languages like Italian, German, Russian, French, Ukrainian, and maybe more, but not Estonian yet. And we will soon hear her story, the reason behind it, how she learned to speak so many languages, as this is part of her growing up childhood, I think. And yes, Xeniya, the floor is yours now.
Okay, so I want to ask if you all hear me well, because this is important. Good. If there are problems with the sound, just wave, do something, move. And I will show you my screen because I have a small presentation, which is mostly photos, but it is good for you to see what I want to talk to you about. Do you all see my screen now and my presentation?
Yes, now it's perfect and big.
Okay. Everyone sees my presentation. Good, then I can start. So, thank you very much for coming, first of all, and for being interested in what I would like to tell you today. And I really hope that you will spend a very nice evening. And as we will be spending this 1.5 hours together, I would like to tell you my story. My story started in 1994 in a very, very small town in the middle of sunflowers in the south of Ukraine. So I think everyone knows Ukraine, but probably not very well the cities of Ukraine. So here is a map. I was born a little bit different from other children because I was born with a condition called cleft palate. A cleft palate is a kind of split that you have in your palate, and it can be of different stages. It can be just the hard palate, it can be just the soft palate, just the lip, or it can be the three together, which I had. So my condition was classified as serious because it was, I didn't have a soft palate, a hard palate, and my upper lip. I had to do 3 operations throughout my childhood. I can't say that they were easy, and after the operations, I also had to go to a specialist for a pretty long time because I couldn't pronounce certain letters, for example, K and G, because if you try saying them, you will notice that your tongue touches your palate, and if you don't have a palate, you can't know how to pronounce them. So I had to do this as well, and now comes the question, how did it happen that I was born like this? This is due to the fact that when the Chernobyl accident happened, my mom was a student in Kiev. And as you see on the map, Chernobyl is here and Kiev is here. It's around 100 kilometers away, which is almost nothing for radiation. When the accident happened, theoretically, because of the radiation levels, the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, should have been evacuated as well. But you understand that it's very difficult to evacuate a capital, and it is also very bad image. It gives a very bad image for the Soviet country. So the government didn't do anything, and the people didn't even know about the whole radiation. And my mom told me that when a week later, after the accident, there was the big parade for the 1st of May. Everyone was attending it, and people were very happily outside, and they didn't even know what was going on. And in this period, so the first weeks after the accident, the radiation levels in Kiev were very, very high. If today on the central street of Kiev, which is Hryshchatyk, you have around 16 so you have to, okay, this is a little bit complicated, but when you had this accident, no one wanted to measure the real levels of radiation that were there, but now it came out that back then the radiation levels were between 500 and 1,200 microengen, and the norm is around 30. So it shouldn't be more than 30 for it to be not harmful for a person. And so you imagine how horrible it was. So except for me, my parents also had other 2 children, which are my 2 sisters. My bigger sister was born in 1990, so 4 years after the accident, and she has a very weak immune system and problems with her blood circulation. And after my bigger sister, they had another daughter who lived only for 8 months because she was born with a condition called Chernobyl heart, which is basically a malformation of the heart. But what I want to tell you with this is that even if this horrible thing happened in Ukraine due to nuclear energy, the Ukraine has not stopped its production of nuclear energy, and today it's the 10th biggest country in the world that produces nuclear energy. And here on the map, it's not a very good map, but at least there is my city on it, which is a big achievement. So here you see Marhanets, which is the city where I come from. And on the other side of the river, right here, there is a city called Enerhadar. Enerhadar is a very, very small city, but it's very important in Ukraine because it has a very big nuclear power plant. It's the 7th big nuclear power plant in the world, and it is just 17 kilometers away from my hometown. So now, what I want to say is that a lot of people in my city have health conditions because of this radiation, and because of the fact that our river is very polluted, for example. So if you see here, the river Dnipro is very wide because we have a Kakhovska водохранилище, which is a very big water reservoir. It almost basically provides with water a big part of Ukraine. And it is very polluted because of the atomic power plant that is just on the other side. And because of this reason, we usually do not eat the fish that we can fish in the river, because it is not of very good quality. You risk to have you have a very good chance that the fish that you fish and you eat has too much radiation in it. And then around my city, there is also nuclear waste storage that comes from Enerhadar. And because of this nuclear waste storage, it is also not recommended to eat mushrooms, for example, because mushrooms absorb a lot from the soil, and together with everything they absorb, they also absorb the radiation. So it is dangerous. Here is the nuclear power plant. This is the view from my town, and I can actually even see it from my garden. So this is what I was used to from my very childhood, seeing these 2 towers. There is also a problem because if you Google today about health conditions or nuclear storage that is situated near my city, you will not find a lot of information, because most of the things that are published are being taken down, or there is a very big business behind this nuclear power plant and power plants in general in Ukraine. And there is a very big corruption that stops the real information coming out. So studies are usually not being done or not being published because of this huge lobbyist operation behind it. But what I want to say is that this is not only a problem of Ukraine, because there are many countries in the world that suffer from nuclear waste, suffer from radiation, and I want to take you to Central Asia right now, which is the area I am studying for my thesis. Just as a reminder, Central Asia is made of 5 countries: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, that were all part of the Soviet Union. So at the end of World War II, Central Asia became the experimental ground for Soviet nuclear testings and for the Soviet Union to develop its nuclear project. Of course, there were also other parts of the Soviet Union that were affected, parts of Russia, parts of Ukraine, parts of Belarus, but Central Asia was the part of the Soviet Union that suffered the most from it. The only country that hasn't been touched by it in Central Asia is Turkmenistan. I will give you an example of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Let's start from Tajikistan. Tajikistan is a place where uranium has been very intensively mined because it has relatively good amounts of uranium, and the uranium was found there, and there has also always been nuclear testings as well. But the problem is now that when the Soviet Union collapsed, the sites were just abandoned and they were not being done secure and safe, and people were not informed, and right now there are used materials that are being found by people, and the people sell them or use them as building materials, and this is very, very bad for their health because those materials are contaminated and they have a lot of radiation in them, and they're just absolutely not safe even to touch. And I'm not talking about building homes with them or selling them over. In addition to this, there is also the problem that because these sites are not secured, especially the nuclear waste sites, there are many risks that can be taken with it. For example, today, as you know, there is a war going on in Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is the direct neighbor of Tajikistan, as you see on the map as well. And here you have a photo of the border between Afghanistan and Tajikistan. As you see, it's just a small river that theoretically you should not have too many problems crossing. So now the problem is that this nuclear materials, they can be stolen by terrorist groups and being taken to and being sold to the Taliban, for example, in Afghanistan. And they can use them for building, and they can use them for giving them to terrorist groups, or for using them themselves for building something called dirty bombs. So now a dirty bomb is a bomb that is being created using radioactive materials, combining them with explosive materials, which will make them a self-made bomb, and they are, of course, very, very dangerous. So looking at this photo, you see that the risks of these materials being taken to Afghanistan are relatively high. Kyrgyzstan shares more or less the same situation as Tajikistan, and there is a very small village that is not very well known. but I would like to talk to you about it because today the small village of Mailusu is one of the most polluted places on Earth. It is one of the most polluted places on Earth because during the Soviet Union, it is like Tajikistan, it was a very important place for mining uranium, and the results from it were that nuclear waste has been buried around the river, and the health of workers and families living there was absolutely not the priority of the Soviet Union back then and of the government. So as like in Tajikistan, as soon as the Soviet Union collapsed, all of the sites have been abandoned. So here you see an abandoned mining and processing plant of uranium. As you see, it's totally abandoned, which means children can go there to play, or people can go there to take constructing materials, because these areas are very, very poor and people struggle. So everything that can be used is used. And here as well, you have an abandoned uranium mine. And these photos are to show you that this nuclear waste, this nuclear and this uranium mines that are just being left like this, they are very harmful for the people, and there is a very, very high percentage of people having cancers or very serious health concerns because of this. And no one, even the government, didn't even think of warning the people of how dangerous it is. And so it is often said that Mailusu is literally built on nuclear waste. And this is true because it really is. And the river is also relatively polluted, the same as in my town. And the government, when the statistics are shown to them that certain health concerns are very frequent there, they just use it as an excuse the fact that cancer rates, for example, are much higher nowadays everywhere in the world. So they're just saying excuses not to take responsibility. The last point I would like to say is that during this period, so during the Cold War, the Soviet Union made more than 450 atomic weapon tests in Central Asia, and some of them ended up in very huge accidents that have been hidden. And an example is an accident that happened in 1956 in Kazakhstan in a city called Ust-Kamenogorsk. And this accident, according to reports that have been found when the archives got opened of the Institute of Radiation Medicine and Ecology in the town of Semey, it says that on that day when this accident happened, around 600 people were taken to hospital with acute radiation syndrome, which is a condition that affects people when they are subject to very high radiation levels for a long period of time, which doesn't necessarily have to be very, very long. It depends on the amount of radiation, of course. But for you to have a comparison, when the accident in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant happened, 134 people were taken to hospital with acute radiation syndrome. So this is a very good number, just to show you how horrible that just was, and how relatively easy it is to hide things. And so my very, very last point is that most of the things I have told you today about Central Asia are have been kept under secret for a very long time, and there are for sure many things that we still don't know and that have been come up just because a part of the archives have been opened. And the Soviet Union kept this information secret and decided to sacrifice the population for its own economic and political interests, which were showing the world that it was better than the United States, or just to use the nuclear power to be much richer. And there are, of course, many things that one could say that maybe it was good, that nuclear power and nuclear energy is great, but at some point there are very horrible things that are being hidden, and you never know when a nuclear test is being done or when a nuclear power plant is being opened. You never know what really comes to the surface and is being told to the population and what not. And so this is the end for my presentation, and this last photo is a picture of the lake Chagan, which is in Kazakhstan as well. It is called Atomic Lake because it was made by an explosion of an atomic bomb that was being made intentionally, because this area of Kazakhstan has problems with water supplies. So the scientists thought, we will use nuclear weapons for something peaceful and great, and we will create a lake so that the people living nearby can use it for fishing and living there. But even still today, the radiation levels there are really, really high. And every time they tried, the scientists, to make fish live in there, after some time, all the fish died. So this is a very good indicator for how great the water in this lake is. Yeah. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope that this was interesting, and that if you have questions, feel free to ask them. And I will stop my presentation screen thing. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing. That definitely was really interesting to hear. I can see people, Jutta, clapping. Now is the space. We have a little bit under an hour. Where any questions, any ideas, that's the place to share from the just. If anybody has already a question or something to share, then now you go ahead. Thank you. Yes, Madis.
Thank you for the presentation, Xenia. I'm really happy that you chose us as your internship place to go to. And regarding that, like, what was your?
I'm happy that you chose me.
What was your first emotions when you got to Estonia and you came to the office and we told you that, hey, actually, let's watch this new nuclear conference about the Estonian nuclear power plant that's being proposed. So what were your first ideas regarding that?
Okay, so first of all, before coming to Estonia, I didn't know much about Estonia, which is a shame, of course, but this was one of my aims to go there. And I knew that Estonia is a country that doesn't have nuclear power plants, and I was very happy about it. So I thought that it is a very good example for other countries, and for me it was a good occasion to use Estonia when I would be back to France and say, hey, look, Estonia is great, they don't have nuclear power. And so when I arrived and I learned about this SMR project, so for those who maybe don't know, SMRs are small modular nuclear reactors, which is a project that should be, that apparently some businessmen want to realize in Estonia. And I was very disappointed. I was disappointed because I have experienced this nuclear power, let's say, under here, Kavычки, and I know how bad it is, and I know how much people in my city suffer. I know people who have cancers. I know that most women in my town have very difficult pregnancies and very weak children are born because of this very bad ecological and radioactive levels that we have in my city. And I was disappointed because Estonia, when you ask someone about Estonia, usually the first thing that people think is Skype and a country that's super technological with a lot of internet and internet in all the forests everywhere, and a country that is very I say developed, that is ahead of others for certain things. And then I learned about nuclear reactors, that small modular nuclear reactors that should be built, and I'm just super disappointed, and I really hope for Estonia that this project will not be realized, especially because I told you about these experiments that have been done in Central Asia, and I didn't do it by chance. I did it because SMRs are an experiment. There are no places in the world where SMRs have already been built, so Estonia would be the first place, and it is an experiment. So the risk that comes with an experiment being done come with it. So I hope something will be done.
I think that you're sharing your own personal experience here is also something to be done. So thank you for that.
I have been in Estonia just for 2 months, but what I can say is that Estonia is relatively small, and even now, 35 years after Chernobyl, we have so much trouble with this area, and it's a huge area where you can't use it, you can't grow anything on there, you can't live there, you can't do anything. It's just an area that is lost for centuries because you just can't use it. And for example, maybe you heard it, but last year around this time of the year, so February, March, there have been very, very strong fires in the Chernobyl zone, and the smoke arrived also to Kiev. And I know from my cousin and other family members of mine who live in Kiev that they had very thick dust, dark black dust, a very thick layer of dark black dust that came from the smoke from this area. And those who had the dosimeter knew for sure that the levels they were in Kiev, they were higher than what should be the safety norm. And this is just because of a fire that is 100 kilometers and even more than 100 kilometers away. So I just think that if an accident happens, I hope not, and I hope these small nuclear reactors will not be built in Estonia, but if they are built and if something happens, you will literally lose maybe half of the country, because Estonia is so small and it's so precious that you can't just leave it for some businessmen who want to earn a lot of money out of this project. And of course, there are lobbyists and there are groups who work with this and who try to make it look as if it was the best solution and the only solution, and who want to just silence all the people, for example, like your mom, who actually know all the horrible things that happened. Chernobyl is only one example. So just look, even when they say things like, we are modern and it's everything, new technologies and everything, think about Japan. Japan is such a technological country. Like they have intelligent toilets, seriously. And even in Japan, such a horrible disaster happened. This is not only about, it's not that it happens only in countries that have political and economic problems.
And I can see that Henry has a question, so I would take Henry, and then I would like to hear Madis and Jim. I don't know who was earlier. Henry, go ahead, and then Madis can also say.
Okay, yeah. Thank you really for the presentation, and conversation really made to consider a bit more about the nuclear energy possibilities in any scopes, business or not. But I wanted to bring up a few years ago, I happened to meet a doctor that whose mother was like a meteorologist in Estonia when the nuclear when the explosion in near to Kiev happened, and she recorded like details that in Rakvere area, like the Ida and Lääne-Virumaa in Estonia, there was like heightened radiation. That's something that didn't get published at the time, but it's like kind of waiting to be published. Well, anyway, going forward with the doctor, we had like a conversation on the nuclear energy, and one thing he pointed out that there was this researcher Peter Witte from the Netherlands that was researching the alpha wavelength radiation in Ukraine. That turned out that from his research that the alpha radiation that is otherwise harmless when like it hits the eyes of young people like under 10 years or so, that their eyesight gets damaged from the research. I wonder, is when you think about your town where you grew up, Xenia, is this is something that is common there, that young people have loss of eyesight?
A very interesting point, and if you have the article of this professor, I would really like to read it. As to my city, I wouldn't say that there are particularly many people who have problems with their eyes, but I can say something else. I can say that in my city, there are a lot of people who have very, very soft teeth and who have very, very soft bones. And this is due to radiation. And for example, if you take a Ukrainian is more likely, because of the soft teeth, to have dental conditions like caries, for example. So if you take someone in Europe, he will probably, most of the times you go to the dentist, everything is fine, and he doesn't really have to do a lot of stuff. In Ukraine, most of the people, even very young people of my age, even children very often have, in my town, but almost around all of Ukraine, black teeth, because they are very, very soft and they get damaged.
Oh, I see.
It's too soft, normally soft. And another condition is that people have a lot of problems with their hearts and blood circulation, so cardiovascular problems. It is very, very common in Ukraine. Everyone in Ukraine is concerned about blood pressure, for example, or tachycardia, like when the heart is beating too fast. And a lot of people die of cancers and of heart conditions, which is also due to radiation. As for the eyes, I think there are people who really have conditions with the eyes, but I cannot say for sure if it is due to radiation. And I'm not sure if in my city it is more than in other parts of Ukraine. There's also an aspect that you have to consider, is that people in my town are very, very poor, and actually going to an ophthalmologist and letting your eyes checked for problems, even if you have problems, yeah, it is too expensive for a family who doesn't earn much. So many people do not even know like they suppose that they have problems because they have, for example, they see like black points in front of their eyes sometimes, but they don't know what they have, or they just don't go to the doctor because it's too expensive, and people, they don't earn enough to do this. So this is another factor that would make it difficult.
I see. Yeah, there's a lot of other health problems in particular. I'll definitely share the article with you.
It's a bunch. It's a bunch of everything. It's just that when you are born in a town that has so much radiation, such a bad ecological situation, because we are also a mining town, and when you're born in a place that has such bad ecology, and I'm not talking only about my city, I'm talking about almost all of Ukraine and with health concerns. It is that you just have, in general, bad health in almost everything. So it's a big problem, and everyone ignores it. And it is so common in Ukraine that people don't even notice it anymore, that it's not normal to have so many problems with health. And it's sad.
Yeah, this is really crazy that these kind of health problems are normal, so that people don't notice those. Yeah. Henry, could you please share the article to everybody, to this chat box as well, if people are interested? And Jim, you go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Xenia, thank you for your talk. It's a pleasure to meet you and to hear from what you describe yourself as an ordinary person. I think in these circumstances, you should call yourself extraordinary. It's been very interesting listening to you.
Thank you.
Welcome. I wanted to share the reason why I was most interested in this topic, not just because I live in Estonia now and I'm very concerned about this idea of having a nuclear power station on my doorstep. I'm from the UK, and there is an organisation in Wales, I'm sending a link, called the Chernobyl Children's Lifeline. And it's a charity.
Heard about it.
You have? Good.
Yes.
Because my mother helps run it. And she's one of the host families for young children coming over from Chernobyl every year for a month to spend some time around Wales. She's been doing it for about the last 7 years. It's an absolutely fantastic charity that they're doing. Am I able to share my screen? Gabriela, can I share my screen?
I'm not sure.
Not yet. Yeah, not yet. But I will make you.
I put a link in the chat to this charity group.
Or
Henry,
can you help me with this?
Yep.
So Xenia, there's the Facebook page for the Chernobyl Children's Lifeline.
Let me check it.
It's a fantastic charity, and they've also been helping out with. You mentioned this fire. It was the fires, I think, were last spring.
Yes, I think they were around February, March. They lasted for a very long time, actually.
Yeah, there's a big post I wanted to kind of share.
Yeah, now you should be able to share. Am I right? Yes, go ahead.
There we go. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yeah, so here we go. So there's a village called Lichmani. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but
yeah.
And they lost 14 homes in the village. Radiation was up by 16%, but through fundraising, they managed to send basic PPE equipment and also medical supplies, paracetamol, thermometers, all this kind of stuff. And there's some pictures of the fire and some pictures of the aid getting through. So it's not a situation that any country or any society should ever face in the future. I shudder. It makes me shiver when anybody says we can make nuclear power safe. I mean, the only way to make nuclear power safe is not to have it, as far as I'm concerned. So I've just wanted to say that there's hope for people who are still suffering from this. Charities like the Chernobyl Children's Lifeline do great work, and I'd love to see something like that happen everywhere, not just in Wales.
So first of all, I would like to thank everyone who works for such kinds of projects and organizations, because there are many people who suffer in Ukraine, and there are many problems, and we have a very bad economic and political situation right now. Political a little bit better than economic, but still we have a lot of internal problems, and we can't, and external as well with war, and we can't just do it all by ourselves, and we have such high corruption. And I was among those children who suffered from Chernobyl, and so especially to me, this is something that is near to me from very, very deep. And I have seen a lot of children who have had these problems and who still have these problems. And I have been lucky because I have been, okay, so now you don't know the whole story, but I had my first operation when I was 8 months old. And then the situation in Ukraine back then was very, very bad. I think the Estonians remember the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s after the Soviet Union fell. So the situation in Ukraine was really, really bad. Economically, politically, the sanitary system was really horrible. And the other two operations that should have been done to me couldn't be done in Ukraine because there were just not enough, they were too difficult for the sanitary system back then. And so I was lucky, and I have been helped by the Italian Red Cross, and I have had the two operations in Italy. It was, so I think I will be thankful forever to this organization who helped me, because usually it's they just do it, and it is something that can change the life of these children as it did change my life. And from one side, Chernobyl has put me in this situation. From the other side, I would not be in Estonia either if Chernobyl didn't happen. So first of all, thank you for this to your mom who works and every day for this. And the other thing is that unfortunately many people forget about the fact that still today there are children being born with these problems and people being born with these problems, because everyone thinks that it happened 35 years ago, so only people who were born in 1986 are affected, or the people who worked for the liquidation of. It's not like this. It's not, and it's about everyone, almost everyone in Ukraine. So you know it firsthand because of your mom, that children today, and not only in Ukraine, Belarus as well, because the radioactive cloud went over Belarus. So most of Belarus should actually not be inhabited today because of the high radiation levels, and the people, they just don't have any choice, and they live there, and they don't have money, they don't have any support. When I was little, and I actually received the pension from the government because of my cleft palate, and because, yeah, Chernobyl. But it was enough money to buy a pineapple. So this tells you the thing. And about Kazakhstan, for example, the people who are affected by this Soviet experiments and the radiation that is still there today, they get from the state, when the state recognizes that they have malformations or problem with the health because of the radiation, and not because your mother smoked when she was pregnant or something like this. They get around 2,000 tenge. €1 is 440 or 420 tenge. So 2000 tenge is like not even €5. This is the pension you get, the help you get from the state for being victim of something that they did to earn money and to be powerful. So thank you for bringing this up.
You're extraordinary.
Thank you for sharing that through you. We can hear the story of many people, and I'm sure that a lot of us wouldn't even think about this, as so far we didn't have to think about that in that way. But it's really valuable that you're here and sharing the story, and yeah, we can hear that there are so many layers there, social, economical injustices, and whole this system actually is it's really not working well. It's not for people. Does anybody else has any questions now? I would like to ask, or any opinion, anything? Yes, Madis.
Yeah, I don't have much to add because I think Xenia answered all the questions perfectly. Yeah, what's planned in Estonia is just a bunch of small reactors that basically make it so that it's one huge power plant still. And about this local level resistance, we're really looking into it because the strategy is to split people apart. So the local community would start fighting with each other and not with the nuclear developers. We see that happening. It's strategy that they use, and we're trying to unite the locals. So all contacts are very welcome, and we try our best to explain these difficult topics because they're they're trying to explain it as difficult as possible, so you wouldn't understand anything, but it's not that difficult actually. There was one other point that slipped my mind at the moment, but it will come back to me.
Also, Michelle was mentioning the difference between the big ordinary power plants and the small ones. Like, what's the difference? Like, why should the small ones be better? Like, or what's the story behind that?
Well, they're better because they haven't been built yet, so you can't criticize them. You can't say what's wrong with them because everything can be fixed on paper. So nothing's wrong with them because nothing's right with them either. But what is important is that even if there is no accident, there still is radiation. So even if everything goes well and fine, you still have problems. So that's not different in any reactor design.
Every time they say things like this, it's as if they were taking a knife and putting it inside the heart of all these people who have family members or who themselves are affected by radiation, and just putting it in and turning it around so that it hurts even more. And they're just doing this, and they are also showing a lot of disrespect to those who suffered from Chernobyl, and not only to Chernobyl, because we can't do things that are normal. We can't eat the fish that is in our river. We do not even really swim in there. I mean, there are people who swim in there, but it is super dangerous because the river is literally radioactive. It's not as bad as the Chagan lake in Kazakhstan, but it's not good for a human to swim in there because the chances of you getting super ill from it are very, very high. And we are 800 kilometers away from Chernobyl. So that's the thing.
Yeah, it seems like those people make the people who the Fermi people make the people who suffer to feel like irrelevant, like those, but the experience and everything that you're going through. You're like, no, that's not real. That didn't happen.
Their statistics says that nobody suffered and nobody died. So Xenia does not exist. And
Madis, actually, I would like you to ask us, or Jokke, to do a quick overview of the main issues. Like, so what are those still today remaining issues? Why this nuclear energy is actually not safe and good idea.
I recommend watch the short video I made. It was on the link Xeniya has posted. So maybe it gets too long here, but to make it really short is that even in the best case, these technologies would come in 15 years, and we don't have 15 years to actually start moving on this environmental and climate crisis. So it's just delaying action, and this is why we shouldn't even. I really hate it when I go to work each day and I have to deal with the nuclear issue, and it's just delaying all the actual important stuff.
You can give the whole nuclear issues to me. I really like it. Not that I like nuclear, but I like dealing with it, so I will do it. I like it.
And Carol, I can correct me, but I think we have more webinars coming on related slightly to this topic. So I don't know who you have booked, but at some point I will also talk a longer session, and I will also touch on these issues.
Okay. And there is the Facebook page.
Yes.
Tuumaenergia 10A or something like this.
Yes, tuumaenergia ei.
Exactly.
Where is all this relevant information about nuclear energy? I will look it up quickly.
On the idea that going forward, what to do. One thing I really realized during this discussion is that the story, like I researched somewhat nuclear energy. I've learned about the facts, the waste, find it like a bit disgusting. But when I hear Xeniya's story, I'm like, ooh, like, wow, wait a minute. Like, actually, there's like people dying, and like whole country is like having chronic diseases. I think like that's a story that I will really take with me and share with friends and foes who consider supporting nuclear energy or not.
Thank you.
Really give it perspective.
This is among the best things you can say, because if this will play a role in Estonian people deciding themselves against nuclear power, then it will have been useful and it will have been worth something.